Okay, we can go ahead and get started. So welcome, my name is Kevin Saracino. I'm a member of AmeriCorps. I'm currently serving with Chagrin River Watershed Partners. And welcome to the next presentation in our speaker series. This one is titled Your Backyard Stream, an Owner's Manual. I'm joined with Jared Bartley, who's a Senior Program Manager with Cuyahoga Soil and Water Conservation District. This training is geared towards residential riparian property owners. We're going to get into some insights on the legal aspects of stream ownership. We're going to get into a general introduction of stream science and management. We're also going to talk a little bit about livestick installation and maintenance for stream bank stability and habitat enhancement. With that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Jared and we can get started. Thank you very much.
Great. Thanks, Kevin. Well, like Kevin said, my name is Jared Bartley. I'm the Senior Program Manager at Cuyahoga Soil and Water Conservation District. As we get started here, just want to cover our things. Part of this is being provided through a grant through the Ohio Environmental Protection Agency and US EPA. And just what I'm talking about tonight does not necessarily reflect the views of Ohio EPA or US EPA, and you should not infer any endorsement thereof, although I'm sure they'd be fine. So at Cuyahoga Soil and Water Conservation District, you got a picture of our nice office there in Cleveland. Our mission is to very clear and straightforward, implement programs and practices that protect and restore healthy soil and water resources. We focus obviously in the Cuyahoga County area. We also work closely with a lot of our partners like Chagrin River Watershed Partners, other watershed groups. We manage watershed programs in the Rocky River, Euclid Creek, and Cahoon Porter watersheds. We also provide educational opportunities to schools and other groups. And a lot of our staff is dedicated to our stormwater management program, where we provide assistance to communities to implement their stormwater management programs. So, just a quick overview. Kevin mentioned a lot of this, but we're going to go over basically an introduction to your stream, rights and responsibilities of stream owners, and common stream problems and solutions. Before we go any further, though, it's going to be a little bit interactive here. We're going to launch a poll for you. So the question is, do you have a stream on your property? So go ahead, and once we get everybody voted, we'll see kind of who we have in attendance here. So I can see that we got 19% of people voted so far. So hopefully everyone can see that poll and can make a vote. We're going to have a few more of these throughout the evening. All right, so we're up to most people had a chance to vote here. So I'm going to go ahead and close that poll and share the results. So we had most people, the vast majority of people do have a stream on their property or have a friend or family member that has a stream on their property. A couple people that don't, just here to listen and learn, and that's great. We're welcome to have everybody. All right, so we're gonna close that poll out. We got one more right now. So this is obviously geared towards those of you who have a stream on your property, and I use stream to mean river, creek, run, whatever you want to call the water body flowing through your property. Just stream is a general term. So what stream related issues have you experienced? These are some common ones that we get calls about or we see as issues locally. And you can check all that apply to your situation. So we have stream bank erosion, debris jams and blockages. By debris, that could be logs or other kinds of debris. Flooding. If you do have other issues that you've experienced, please make sure to add that to the chat box so we can potentially address those later. Or none, and you have your stream behaves wonderfully all the time, and you stay out of its way and it stays out of your way, and everybody's happy. So Yeah, most people have voted so far, so go ahead and close the poll out and share those results. So obviously the vast majority of people have had issues with stream bank erosion. That's not uncommon. That's probably the most common call we get from landowners related to stream issues. Debris jams and blockages, flooding. It's another issue that we'll talk about, but not as much that an individual landowner can necessarily do about that. And those of you who suggested other, please, if you can, add some of that to the chat and we'll collect those and maybe address those later on. So moving right along. So introduction to your stream. So we're going to talk about some of the physical processes and how streams work and what they do in the landscape. So streams have 4 main functions in the watershed landscape. So just try to think to yourself, I'm not going to do a poll or anything, think to yourself what you think those might be. So they transport water. I think that's one that everyone understands intuitively and gets. Obviously, they transport water. They try to transport sediment and debris through the watershed. So thinking debris in a natural system, that's going to be like wood, leaves, things like that. But in an urban system, that's also going to be trash, construction debris, concrete, other things like that that have either fallen into or been intentionally dumped into the stream system. They provide habitat for not just fish, amphibians, macroinvertebrates, but that riparian corridor, or streamside corridor, is important for mammals and birds as well. And nutrient cycling, so nitrogen, phosphorus, carbon, all this stuff, the streams play an important role in cycling those nutrients through the ecosystem. So just some terminology so we all know we're talking about the same things when we're talking about our streams, get us on the same page. The riffle is the shallow portion of the stream. It's usually where you'll find in that stream channel the bigger pieces, the bigger rocks. A lot of times those will be cobbles or boulders, and you'll see, it'll look like a rapids sometimes. Now, not always. In smaller streams, it might not look that way. It just might be the part where the stream water is flowing a little faster. But in larger streams that have these larger boulders and larger rocks, it will look, like the classic rapids. You'll see standing waves sometimes when you get a lot of rain. The pool is what it sounds like. It's the deep portion of the stream channel. It usually it's slower flowing and has a smaller substrate or smaller pieces. So think sand, silt, clay, things like that, as on the bottom of the stream channel, on the stream bed in those pools. A bar, when we're talking about a bar, it's not necessarily, you could have drinks there, but for the most part, when we're talking about stream systems, we're talking about a point bar, which is on the, where you have a bend in the river. It's on the inside of that curve of the river. It's where sediment is deposited during higher flows, but lower velocity during those higher flows. In stable streams, the top elevation of that point bar will usually match or be close to the elevation of the floodplain. In streams where we've had a lot of erosion of the stream bed and urbanized systems where that stream has downcut, the top of the point bar elevation will be detached from the floodplain elevation. Also, a good sign of an unstable stream channel would be a mid-channel bar, so a little island in the middle of the stream channel. That's a sign of an unstable system, and also that will have high shear stress then on the outsides of that channel and lead to additional stream bank erosion. So floodplain, you heard me mention this previously, is generally flat area next to the stream. It's where the water from the stream can spread out during a storm, during a flood. It's really an important, it's what we come to understand, especially in urban and suburban systems, that floodplains are extremely important, not just for storing flood water, but they dissipate energy. So moving water is energy, and it gives you a chance to dissipate that energy. Provides, you know, an area where you get a lot of plant growth, you can get a lot of nutrient uptake. And really, when a stream loses access to its floodplain, and this usually happens either by down cutting or could be by filling of the floodplain or construction there, you lose a lot of function and a lot of stability in the stream system. So floodplains are really important, and we're really trying to protect and restore those wherever we have the opportunity to do so. So basically, healthy streams have riffles and pools and are connected to their floodplains. A lot of times, also in impacted or urbanized stream channels, we won't have this diversity of habitats within the stream system. There'll be maybe a really short riffle and then a really shallow pool, and it's all kind of the same, almost just a glide through there. So there won't be a lot of change. It'll just be a homogeneous channel. And that's not good habitat, and it's also a sign in our area anyway, in Northeast Ohio, of a system that's really not very stable. So there are many things that contribute to a stream's channel's size, shape, and stability. So how much, you know, some of these are really intuitive and some are less so, but how much, basically, what's the rainfall like in the area? How much rain do you get? What's the drainage area? So how much land is contributing the rainfall it receives to that stream channel? What's that land cover like? We'll talk about this a little bit more, but is it forested? Is it a residential subdivision? Is it a commercial area? Is it agricultural area? What's the slope of the system? Is it really a steep valley or channel, or is it a lot more flat and shallow? What kind of sediment and debris are in the stream system? Is it an area where you have big chunks of sandstone in there, or is it mostly little shale pieces? So how much roughness that can affect the velocity of the water. And then physical constraints like bedrock. So a lot of times we've seen where streams erode down to the layer of bedrock, and then they really start getting the stream bank erosion going because they can't cut through the bedrock as much, and they start really wiggling around, if you will. Trees, and then more man-made obstacles or constraints like bridges, culverts, dams, retaining walls, things like that. These all impact the stream channel size, shape, stability, and overall health, and really how resilient they might be to changes in the system. So the one thing that I would say characterizes a lot of Northeast Ohio, certainly Cuyahoga County, and then the surrounding counties, is advancing urbanization and suburbanization. When we're talking about that, we're really talking about what the land surface is like. So is it impervious, where the rain can infiltrate into the ground, or impervious, where the rain will hit the surface like a concrete, for instance, and run off to a storm sewer, storm drain, or the nearest creek or river. So in the natural landscapes, these tend to soak this in. They soak up the rain, you know, to spread it out, slow it down, and soak it in. Whereas in the developed landscape, we're discharging, you know, we're trying to get the water off the landscape as quickly as possible. And really, this is the, you know, throughout a lot of Northeast Ohio, when the land was developing, when our communities were developing, say in the mid 20th century to late 20th century, the dominant paradigm in municipal engineering was to get the water off the landscape as quickly as possible. And we were very efficient at that. But that led to downstream consequences, which we'll talk about here in a minute. So continuing on with this slope, and this is a very busy slide. I'm not going to talk through all of this, but basically in an urbanized system, you get more water into the stream system faster than you do under natural conditions. So one thing I like to talk about to illustrate this point is just think, if you're like me, like go for a hike, you go for a hike in the metro parks or something, and go for a hike in the woods, and it starts to rain. Especially in the spring and summer, you don't feel that rain right away. It could be raining for several minutes before you start feeling any drops because those trees are intercepting that rainfall. It really rains for a while, and that rainfall slowly makes its way down through the layers of the forest, down from the canopy, down through the underbrush. It's absorbed by the leaf layer on the forest floor. It slowly soaks into the ground. It rains really, really hard for a while, and then you'll start to get the runoff after it's, already most of it's been absorbed by the forest system. And the nearby stream will slowly rise, spread out onto its floodplain if it get enough rain, and then slowly recede. Now, on the other hand, I've also been in the parking lot at like Giant Eagle or Home Depot when it starts to rain. And in contrast, you get soaked right away. You're sloshing through it ankle deep. And all that water, instead of being intercepted by the forest and soaked into the ground, is now just being directed to the nearest storm drain as quickly as possible. And if it's in a newer development, a newer commercial area, it's hopefully going to a detention basin or retention pond to be held and released slowly. But if not, that's all just going to the nearest storm drain, which is just kicking straight out to the nearest stream, usually a smaller stream headwater stream channel, where all that water is just being flushed through the system. It's like opening a fire hose on the system. And so all that moving, when we're removing water, is energy. All that energy is working on the stream bed, the stream bank, and leading to erosion. Another factor we're fighting against, not just the amount of impervious surface, are changing stream discharge patterns related to climate change and the amount of rain we're getting, and not just the amount, but we're getting it in more intense events. So this is based on a flow gauge in the Rocky River that's been in use since 1923. Gotta go back. Obviously, I did this a few years ago, so it's been a few more years since that. But 6 of the 13 largest peak discharges at the time, so this was in 2016, had been recorded since 2004, and 4 of those 6 large ones had been since 20. So basically, 4 of the largest discharges recorded in the 93-year history of this system have been since 2010. We actually have another higher one on there we could add for 2016, I believe. So we really have seen, it's not just people say like, oh, we've had 400-year storms in the last 3 years. It's not just kind of stories and people just thinking about like, man, we seem to be getting a lot of rain. We are getting more rain, more intense rainfall, and it is being transmitted to our streams. We are getting these higher stream flows during these storm events. And this is just a kind of an illustration of how this works. On the left, you see a diagram of what we call the channel evolution model. So as you're either increasing the amount of water that's getting into the stream channel, either because of more impervious surfaces in the watershed or increased stream flow due to climate change, the stream erodes down, reaches bedrock or another hard surface, and then starts to spread out, and you get this erosion. Eventually, it will make a stable channel. It'll, nature's always, it's searching, these streams are searching for equilibrium. So they'll find ways to do this, but this usually takes on the order of decades. And then also you can see it's now spread out. So if we have any infrastructure or other things, yards that we don't want to lose next to the stream channel, if we wait for this to take its course, you're going to lose a lot of that on the sides of these. This is a natural process. It's just really accelerated by the changes we made on the landscape and the changing weather patterns. So you can see in this illustration, see the yellow line there marks the elevation of the floodplain, and you can see how far the stream channel has downcut in this instance. And this is not even the worst, the ones we see. This is pretty standard, I would say. This section of the stream is probably draining about 8 or so square miles. And you can see there's trying to form this like almost point bar on the inside of this. And you can see how much, there's several feet. If Elizabeth down here for scale, she's about 5.5 feet tall, and so you can see it's probably about a 4-foot difference there, at least, between the floodplain and where the top of that point bar would be. So that stream, realistically, it has to have a huge storm, a huge stream flow to be able to get out onto the floodplain and get the benefits of storing that floodplain in the floodplain, storing that floodwater in the floodplain, dissipating that energy, storing that floodwater. So that just also then, all that water, instead of being an energy, instead of being dissipated, is concentrated in the channel. It's like one of those positive feedback loops or a vicious cycle, however you want to look at it. The more we incise, the more that energy is concentrated in the channel, and the more incision and erosion you get. Also passes that energy downstream then as well. So that's kind of, as far as like stream channel and a lot of why we have erosion issues and why we get a lot, a lot of the times we get a call like, well, I bought this house 25 years ago. I could hop across that little stream channel, no problem. And now it's 10 feet wide and 6 feet deep. And it's kind of, this is what's leading to those issues. So now we're going to get into some of the legal aspects of your rights and responsibilities as a streamside property owner. We will have a poll here, but before we get into this section, I just want to preface, I'm not a lawyer. I don't play a lawyer on TV. This is just kind of how the information has been presented to us as far as how water law and drainage law works in the state of Ohio. So I'm going to launch another poll here. So if stream flows through your property, do you own the water? Just want to see what people think here. So your options are yes, no, or it depends. I'll give you a hedge there, I guess. So if you want to go ahead and respond to that poll, just kind of see, I like to see kind of what people's thoughts on this are as we get into this. So about a quarter of the people have voted. Give it another 10 or 15 seconds here. All right, we'll have a couple polls here when we're going through this section of it, just to get an idea of where people are with this. So I've had 80% votes. I'm going to go ahead and close the poll, share the results. So 93% said no, and 7% said it depends. All right, so the answer is no, you do not own the water. The water is part of the commons or the public trust. So you don't actually own the water flowing through your stream channel. Now you own the water, you own the land on, so say you own both stream banks of the stream channel. You own the land on both sides. You own the land under the stream channel, so the stream bed, but the water flowing through there, as I mentioned, is part of the commons or the public trust. What that means, and this is interesting, is technically someone floating in a canoe or kayak could float through there and not technically be on your land if they're in the on the water. But as soon as they drag bottom or set their foot down on the bottom, they would be on your property or on your land. So just a little quirky part of that. So can you use the water? So this is going to be our next poll. So if a stream flows through your property, can you use the water? So we'll go ahead and save you the same options, the yes, no, and it depends. So give everybody a chance to vote here for what they think the answer is. Take this minute to take a drink of water. All right. I think looks like most people voted here so far, so I'll close the poll and share the results. So 39% said yes, 23% said no, and 39% said it depends. We had a tie between yes and it depends. So And the answer for this is yes, you can. You have what are called riparian rights. So that means you can divert the water. You can put a pump in there and use the water to irrigate a farm field, or you can use it to pump water out to fill your swimming pool if you wanted. I don't think you'd want to do that, but so you're allowed to use that water. You can divert that water for use on your property. Now there are some caveats to that. There are some limits. So if you're gonna, and it depends on where you are, like if you're in the lake or watershed and how the stream is classified and those kind of things. But generally, if you're pumping out less than about 100,000, you don't have to worry about it unless you're pumping more than about 100,000 gallons a day out of the stream. At that point, you start to get into potentially needing some permits depending on what you're using it for, and like I said, how your stream is classified. And also, and we'll talk about this a little bit here later, you can't, if you would pump all this water out of the stream, you would potentially cause some other environmental issues. So then you might run into some trouble there. So obviously it's based on what the stream can handle. And also those riparian rights, so you can divert that flow, so use other places on your property. But you do run into some issues. So if you would harm your downstream neighbors, and not just harm. So the way that this is defined in Ohio, it's based on English, goes all the way back to English common law. But the way this works in Ohio is you can even do harm. You can even cause harm by how you divert the water, divert the flow of the water, but you can't cause what the courts have determined is unreasonable harm. So an unreasonable harm, unfortunately, can only be determined by a court, because that's how it's set up. Unless you have there could also be other local ordinances that dictate how you can manage water on your property, but most places there's not anything too strict about that. So for the most case, you can divert water. You can do so in a way that would technically harm your downstream or upstream neighbors, as long as that's not unreasonable harm. So, and that might be a little confusing. I said that's up to a court then to decide. So basically, if you think you're being unreasonably harmed by how your neighbor or someone else in the stream is using that water, that would have to be decided through the courts. And finally, if a stream is on your property, who is responsible for maintenance, such as clearing debris, addressing erosion problems, etc.? This is our final poll here tonight. So go ahead. So your options for this one are: you are responsible, the landowner, a local government entity is responsible, both are responsible, or none of them are responsible. So go ahead and give people a chance to vote on that one as well. So you came tonight, didn't know you'd have to be doing work too, huh? So I like to see how where people are on these kind of questions. So. All right, getting close to everybody having voted here. I'll go ahead and close that one out and share the results. So 63% of people said that the landowner is responsible. Only 6% said a local government entity such as the city or county is responsible, and 25% said all of the above, and 6% said none of the above. So it's kind of all right, but basically, if there's maintenance you want done on your property, ultimately, in most cases, generally, you would be responsible for that maintenance. It doesn't mean you have to do maintenance on your property on it. So you can have an eroding stream bank and you're fine with it. You don't have to maintain it. You could have a stream debris blockage or a log jam, like in the picture. You wouldn't have to clear it if you don't want to. But if you do want it cleared, you would be responsible for it in most cases. Now, there are situations where there are sometimes a local government entity will come in if it's impacting public infrastructure and make some repairs or clean out a debris jam. Also, certain areas within the Northeast Ohio Regional Sewer District's stormwater management program. If you're within that service area, there are certain areas where they'll come and do maintenance. Basically, they'll do an assessment to see A, if they think it's needed, and B, how much it's impacting. Either is it going to erode into a house or cause a road to flood, things like that, or block a culvert. But generally speaking, you are going to be responsible. Now, there are some cases, even the exception to that, well, not to you being responsible, but the exception to not having to do anything if you don't want to, is there are some communities, and I don't know where they all are, but I know of one in particular in Medina County where they do have an ordinance on the books that says if you have a stream on your property, you must maintain it clear and free flowing. So in that case, I think if the city could come in, and if there was an issue that was affecting other people, they could say, you need to remove that debris jam because it's flooding your neighbor. I don't know of any instances of them actually enforcing that or enacting it, but there are, because they have it on the books, it leads me to believe there could be some other communities that have a similar ordinance in place. I'm gonna hide those results. Okay, yeah, so as I mentioned before, you don't have to do that. So some common stream problems and solutions we'll talk about now. So as we talked about before, stream bank erosion, debris and log jams, and flooding. So just example of erosion, a lot of times when we have people who have stream bank erosion, they have some of these same issues that are illustrated in this picture. Lawn mowed up to the edge is a popular one. One of the best things, probably the single best thing you can do for your stream, is to leave a forested riparian buffer. Having the woody vegetation there, the roots help hold the bank in place, provide a lot of other benefits, which we'll talk about that a little more in a minute. You can see the yard waste dumped by the stream. People think, oh, it's organic, we just dump it in there, it's no problem. But especially in smaller headwater streams like this, that amount of material dropped in the stream can really affect the dissolved oxygen levels in the stream, because you use a lot of oxygen to decompose that lawn waste. And then sometimes also you see people like, oh, I got these concrete slabs, I'll throw those over the edge to try to stop the erosion. And that might work temporarily, but it tends to move the problem downstream because it just accelerates the flow downstream. Also, it's water, next big storm tends to get under and work around those, and been in lots of streams where people have put in some concrete slabs, and then a year or two later, all downstream from there is a bunch of concrete slabs just sticking in the middle of the stream channel and causing other issues. So it's usually not the way to go for that. So it's a lot of examples of what not to do. So this stream is definitely unhealthy and could use some help. You see just some issues of different places and types and scales of stream bank erosion, to the point of trees falling in, and the stream, this stream's only draining in this upper left-hand picture, the stream's only draining probably 3 or 4 square miles there, and it's down cut, 8-9 feet. You got the whole trees falling in. Just a couple more of these where people are mowing up to the edge, and so there's nothing there. That turf grass does not have very deep roots, and it just does not hold when you start to get some of the greased flow and erosive flows. You can see in the bottom picture where there's the drain pipe sticking out. It wasn't designed to stick that far out. So you can see just how much lateral stream bank erosion we've had in some of these instances. So I mentioned leaving a forested riparian buffer. So streamside forest buffers, these are like the absolute best thing you can do for your stream channel. From a habitat standpoint, they provide shade. Like I said, the woody debris, or the woody root systems really help to hold the bank and protect the bank, hold it together when you start to get more erosive flows. They help to filter nutrients, intercept rain, water, all these things. I like to describe it as forested streamside buffer it protects you from the stream, but also protects the stream from you. So even just stopping mowing up the edge and leaving yourself whatever kind of buffer width you can. A lot of times we'll say a minimum like, oh, 25 feet or 50 feet, but really just looking at your own yard, your own property, you know, at a minimum, you want to vegetate the slope. Like in this picture, there's no reason to really be mowing that slope there at all. If you want access to be able to walk down there, you can obviously leave a path down to that, but really you want to first stop mowing that, and then, you know, as another measure, start adding trees, shrubs, and other woody vegetation. And then you know, just zones of a healthy stream corridor. And just to illustrate that, you know, it doesn't always have to be trees. If that doesn't work in your situation, it can just be, you know, stop mowing. You know, you can throw out some wildflower seeds, try to grow more of a meadow. You can make it pretty. But the most important part, because these wildflowers, these native plants, they'll have a lot deeper root system than that turf grass, and a lot thicker root system, and that will also provide benefits. The woody root systems are going to be a lot stronger and resisting that erosion, but you'll still get a lot of benefit just by stopping mowing up to the edge. Also, don't dump in the stream channel. You can see a picture. This has lucky enough, I guess you could say that, to be out doing a stream evaluation when one of the neighbors to that stream was mowing his yard and dumping the grass clippings over the edge. You can see in that picture there's some leaf debris and everything. It's not the first time they've been dumping this over the edge. We explained to them why this is not a good idea. I'm not sure if it stopped or not, but so it's not just getting into the stream system. I mentioned how it can, in the process of decomposing the grass clippings and leaves, really suck oxygen out of the water. But also, so you pile up all these grass clippings and things, you're smothering out, you're killing any natural vegetation that would be growing there that would then be helping to stabilize the bank. So that's the other issue with that, is then it's kind of a double whammy. You're causing some water quality problems, and then you're also basically killing off the vegetation that would be helping you stop stream bank erosion. And then some more active solutions you can do, or talk about some bioengineering. Kevin mentioned the live stake pickup for people who signed up for that, but live stakes are basically dormant cuttings of tree and shrub species that will root from that cutting. It's really amazing. These are typically species, you know, the classic ones are different willows, but also dogwood, sycamore, elderberry, buttonbush, all sorts of our typical riparian species can work as live stakes and other bioengineering practices, because they will just root from a cutting, which is amazing. So you can see some examples of these here. Once they've been installed and start to grow, you really want to install them as close to the water's edge as you can, because they need to be accessing the water table, which will be the elevation basically of the stream at base flow. So you want to put these in like right at the stream's edge. And you can do a couple rows of them, spread them out when you're installing these. And for those of you who are picking up the live stakes, we'll have more instructions for you. There's also a good time for me to mention, there are some handouts available here for this presentation. And one of those is on live stake installation. There's a couple more on basically stream ownership, kind of the legal aspects, and then also some sections on just living next to a stream. So the other thing, so when you're installing these, sometimes if you're lucky, you'll be able to just push it straight into the stream bank, but sometimes there's rocks, or the soil's harder, things like that, and you have to make a pilot hole with rebar. Or if you don't have rebar, you can just take one of your stakes and kind of designate that, like one of the bigger ones, and designate that as this is what I'm using to make a pilot hole, and you just use a hammer to hammer that in and make the pilot hole for you to be able to install that live stake. And you want to install them at least halfway. So if you have a 2-foot live stake, you want to get at least a foot of it into the soil, a foot to 2/3 of that so half to 2/3 of that. So a foot to 16 inches of that 2-foot live stake, you'd want to be into the soil. Some other things we use are called live machines. So these are bundles of the same kinds of materials, the same species that we would use for live stakes. And you can install them along the stream channel, like right on the edge in the bundles, and they'll root from that as well. This is an instance where we had live machines on the edge of the stream channel here mixed with the live stakes. A lot of times these are used in combinations in larger restoration and stream bank stabilization projects. And you can use the live stakes even to anchor some of your other bioengineering materials. So those machines would be anchored with live stakes into the soil. And finally, we have brush mattresses. Again, it's the same material, these sycamores, willows, all these kind of things. These are actually laid down so it's on soil that's exposed and probably has been tilled up or roughed up a little bit. You lay them down with their ends kind of at the stream's edge, and then you cover them with soil. You also have to anchor them down with some twine or something so they don't float away. And then the one benefit to this is that provides some extra hard protection with those limbs immediately. So you get some protection immediately from that. And again, they'll root and grow, and those roots will help anchor the stream bank. Finally, one thing we like to do, another thing where we have space to do it and the opportunity and either the equipment or we have funds to hire somebody to do it, is grading the stream bank back. So this stream bank like this, you could put live stakes along the bottom here and they definitely have a benefit, but when it's straight up and down like that, it's really great to take the opportunity, if there's nothing else there and you can't have the space and the wherewithal to do it, to actually create what we call a bank fold bench. So basically you're grading the angle back. So you're giving it a gentler angle so you don't have the straight up and down stream bank, but also you're giving it a little bit of a floodplain, kind of a mini floodplain. The bank fold bench would way to think of it as a mini floodplain. So it allows the water to gives it a chance to spread out and higher flows. So it's not as wide as a natural floodplain might be, but it's better than what was in the stream channel or next to stream channel previously. And for most storm events, you'll be able to get some of that water up onto that floodplain, onto that mini floodplain, your bank fold bench, and get some of those benefits of both floodplain storage and dissipating the energy of the flowing water. And obviously in this situation, we come back and we plant that too with shrubs, trees, those kinds of things. So another issue beyond stream bank erosion we deal with is debris and log jams. So this causes a loss of conveyance. You could get upstream flooding and property damage from that. This can be caused, like I said, by debris or logs just getting jammed from the stream channel. You could also sediment, especially at bridges and culverts, can cause some of these issues. Just want to say, dredge. Everybody's like, oh, we got to go in there and dredge out the stream channel. That almost never necessary and is always detrimental and temporary. Like if you're having these issues where you're having sediment build up at a culvert or a bridge, or you're getting debris jams all the time, it's better to address the root cause of that if possible, than to constantly be going in there and dredging out the stream channel. Usually when people come in and do that, they make the stream channel, you're clearing out vegetation, you're loosening up the soil in the stream banks, and usually you're digging the stream channel deeper, so you're eliminating access to the floodplain that would benefit the stream channel and its stability. So some solutions. First, most times these debris and log jams are really healthy for the stream system. They add carbon to the system, which helps with nutrient cycling. Also, because they slow down the water, you get sediment deposited behind them. And so it actually can help to reconnect, raise the stream bed elevation and actually reconnect to the floodplain. And so it can actually, a lot of times when we do stream restoration projects, we're kind of mimicking some of these debris jams and log jams and this large woody debris in the stream channel. And so it can't, unless it's really significantly impeding flow to the point that it's threatening infrastructure, it's going to flood your house, something like that. Really, they're great to leave in place. Or if it's blocking it to a point where it's going to start eroding around it into infrastructure. But if infrastructure is not threatened, usually they're really healthy for the stream system. So here's an example of one where a debris jam or a log jam, and you can see the water is flowing here from the bottom left-hand corner of the slide towards the upper right-hand corner. You see the debris jam there, and you can see the sediment and stuff building up behind this debris jam. And you can see the difference here where above, so upstream or on the bottom left-hand corner, the water looks like it has pretty good access to the floodplain there. Like in a storm, it would actually spread out onto the floodplain. Whereas if you look downstream in the middle of the slide, you can see that eroding stream bank, where in a storm, it's going to keep eroding and cutting down. So this just illustrates kind of the ability of this, of the log jams to almost help restore the stream system on their own. Now, what you can't see is in this case, about 10 feet to the right off the slide is a parking lot for a condominium complex. And so the recommendation for this one ended up be to actually remove the debris jam because it was about to erode into the undercut the parking lot. So if that had not been there though, this would have been a great example of one where maybe you'd want to leave it in place. So just some general guidelines. You know, if you are removing this debris, you want to dispose of it away from the stream. Never, like almost never remove live vegetation. You really just want to take out dead stuff and loose debris. Always leave the stumps and roots. They really help anchor the stream channel. If you're using equipment, don't get in the stream channel. Like use a reach from outside the stream channel. Obviously, you don't want to do this during a storm, so during low flow. For sediment, you really want to use your erosion control practices, and you don't want to just go dump this in the floodplain because it's just going to take out your floodplain storage and potentially cause, you know, like we mentioned with the dumping of the grass clippings and things, you'd kill some of that vegetation that's helping you out otherwise. Now flooding, this is one where, you know, it's very unlikely that if you're having flooding on your property, something that you do on your property, aside from moving whatever is being impacted. So if you're flooding and your driveway is flooding, you know, moving your driveway or something like that, really this is not something where something you do on your property is going to be able to change that. But it is something where you will look, you know, if throughout the watershed, if we can do these practices where we are restoring floodplains, restoring access to floodplains, adding forested corridors along stream channels that will absorb some of this water and help then provide woody debris that can help cause some of these smaller debris jams that can help build up the stream bed some more and create better floodplain access. These are things where we can start to solve some flooding issues. Now, in this case, this is one where they're actually gonna, this road is like, the bridge is not appropriate for the setting. So they're actually in this instance where this picture is, they're actually going to redo the bridge and raise the road and make it higher. That's the other thing, is to move the infrastructure out of harm's way. And a lot of times that could be, you know, if your property's constantly being flooded by a stream, there's different kinds of flooding too. So there's like stream flooding, which is kind of what we're talking about here. But a lot of times people might have basement flooding, and that's usually different kinds of issues related to the storm sewer system or the drains on your own property. But when there's stream flooding, it's really got to take a lot of work upstream to be able to change the flow of the water, how it's moving through the stream system. So in some areas, there are county, like in Lake County, the Stormwater Management Department, Northeast Ohio Regional Sewer District, they are doing some of these, and many of the watershed groups are doing kind of some of these larger watershed scale studies and plans and looking at ways where they can either add storage to stormwater systems through stormwater retrofits, adding storage to basins, or really trying to reconnect floodplains throughout the system so we can get some more storage. And just want to leave you with this. I saw this somewhere, and this is like one of my favorite kind of illustrations here. So most rivers are sinuous. They don't want to be straight, but we tend to want to make them straight. We either move them to accommodate development or agriculture. So basically the combination of channels wanting to be straight and energy and efforts to want to make them wanting to be sinuous and us wanting to be straight. So you combine those two things and basically get the symbol that represents the only successful means of maintaining straight channels, because channels don't want to be straight. If you want your channel to stay straight, it's going to be cost you money in the long run to keep doing stream bank repairs, things like that. So that's the other part of this is, streams in nature and natural settings in Northeast Ohio, for the most part, are going to be sinuous unless they're really steep channels. So they're not going to be straight. And when we move them to try to accommodate development and things, is when we start to get into a lot of these other issues as well. We didn't really talk about that part of it. So, and that's it, what we have for tonight. So I don't know, Kevin, if you've been watching, if there are any questions out there, or if anybody has it, we can open up to questions as well.
Sure. Thank you so much for the presentation. Yeah, we do have a few questions. We could go ahead and answer them now. If you have any questions and you haven't put them in the little questions chat box yet, now's a great time. Okay, so how far apart should live stakes be installed from one another?
Okay, so generally, and a lot of this will depend on, your property and things like that. But generally, we're talking about when I'm in about 3 feet from each other, because they're going to grow and they're sprout and be bushy, but you're also not going to get 100% survivability. So generally, in the 2 to 3 feet is usually what we're looking at in most situations.
Okay, here's another question about live stakes. How tall do these plants get from the Livestick bundles typically?
So usually, because they're right on the stream channel, they and the way that they're cut, it's just a stick. They start to grow. They sprout from the sides of that. So most of them be more bushy than tall, but eventually over time, some of them could get to be tall, but they can be, because of how they are, you can always cut the top off of them. They'll keep growing and you can maintain them in more of a shrub-like state. But most of them, just because of how when they start growing like that, they're not going to get tall as fast as a normal tree of that species would. They're going to be more of a shrub for a while. So I'd say on average for the first 10 to 15 years, they're probably not going to be more than 5 or 6 feet, 7 feet tall, at least the main trunk. But after that, and a lot of it depends too on how much light they get there and things like that. There's some other conditions that play into that.
Okay. Next question. I'm going to try and do all the live stick ones together. Is there any advantage to planting rooted stem cuttings from red Oziah dogwood?
You can. I mean, red osier dogwood is one of the ones that we use, and one of the often for live stakes. So using a rooted stem cutting, that could work as well. The nice thing about live stakes is you don't have to dig as much of a hole to be able to install it, because it doesn't have any roots on it yet. But definitely, the rooted cuttings are used in many situations. I wouldn't do the rooted cutting right as low on the stream bank, right at the water's edge. I do it up a few feet just because if you're how you would have to plant it, it won't be as stable for some of those stream flows.
Okay, where can we purchase more live stakes? We'd like
you can purchase more. So we can send this out when we send out the information too about the live stakes. We usually purchase ours from Ernst Conservation Seeds. It's in Erie, Pennsylvania, or outside of Erie, Pennsylvania. There are some other, I'll list some other resources too. There's some other places we can get them. That's the main place kind of near here where you can get them. Also, if you have some of these species on your property, you can also go out and, when they're dormant, and cut some of these as well. But as far as purchasing them and just having them ready to go, usually Ernst, but I'll list a couple other sources that you may be able to access as well.
Okay. How does a resident find a service or company that can do this type of restoration work to streams?
So we have, well, I'll send the link to that too. We maintain a list of, and I don't know if Chagrin River Watershed Partners might have one too. We maintain a list of contractors or consultants that'll do this kind of work, and we can definitely provide the link to that. I don't know if you guys, so we're obviously focused on more Cuyahoga County, and I don't know where people are, but a lot of these are regional kind of companies, so they would come in. I'm sure it wouldn't be an issue. So.
Great. Okay. Would you ever want to plant something like native pickerel weed in a bank, try and stop erosion?
It would have to be kind of in a lower energy area. I just think it'd be hard to establish. We've had some projects where we've had kind of a wetlandy area of a stream or a backwater area, and still in the storms, when you get a good rain, it really flushes through, and it's hard to get those established. So I think it's less effective than the live stakes or other woody vegetation.
Okay. This one says, my stream has some large pieces of concrete that were there when we bought the property. Should we leave them there or get rid of them?
If it doesn't appear to be causing a negative impact right now, I would leave them. You can even sometimes install a lot. It depends on how large they are too. Like it probably could do more damage trying to remove them than what they might be doing now. I wouldn't replace them if they float downstream at some point. And if they've been there for a while, and are doing okay, you might leave them. It's really kind of a case by case basis. But I would definitely try to maybe install some vegetation. If it's not vegetation growing around it, especially on the upstream edge, I'd want to get some vegetation installed there so the water doesn't get behind it as much and really start to erode behind it.
Okay, just so everyone's aware, we're getting a lot of questions. So if we don't get to yours, I do apologize. We're going to try and go maybe another 5 minutes. So that's next one. There's actually a few questions about beavers. If beavers are coming into the stream onto my property, should any actions be taken?
Not unless that, well, it depends on how. So I've never seen a situation where beavers are so much a problem as far as like felling trees that like you're losing substantial chunks of forest. If that was the case, that might be something you want to look at. But as far as like a beaver dam or something, they, like I said, it kind of the same situation for a regular debris jam. If it's causing impacts to infrastructure, if it's causing your flood, got a driveway culvert that's flooding because of it, because it's backing up, or it's causing the stream to erode into a sewer line or something, or close to your foundation, then you definitely want to do something about it. Otherwise, we think of streams. Yeah, I mentioned that riffle pool habitat. We think of that being, that's what streams would look like. But really, before the eastern United States was settled, a lot of it we're coming to find out now was in a lot of places, because it was so wooded and there were so many beavers, was really an interconnected series of beaver ponds almost. So it's really natural to the area, even though we don't see it as much anymore. And they provide those same benefits too, as far as helping to raise the stream bed elevation. So unless it's really causing other issues, I wouldn't worry about it or take any action.
Okay, are certain grasses like reed or pampas grass appropriate for stream bank stabilization?
We usually don't use them. It's really the woody vegetation. Bro, any vegetation you can get is great. Except obviously we don't want to see invasives when we can avoid it, but any vegetation is better than no vegetation. Really, your woody vegetation though, for actual stream bank restoration, you're going to get that. You need those roots getting in there pretty deep and establishing pretty quickly. And the other benefit you get from the live stakes and things like that is those branches, as they grow, and you get the leaves on those, they're also going to have the hi Sam. You're also going to get the those are going to slow the water down, so you're going to get the benefits of reducing the velocity of the water, and so that will help prevent some of the erosion as well.
Awesome. Is there any benefit to using any sort of root stimulant or enzyme on live stake cuttings to promote growth?
I don't know. We've never used it, so I'm not sure.
Okay.
It probably wouldn't hurt, but I've never tried that. So.
Okay. Can you create live stakes from plants on your own property, or can you create live stakes from live stakes eventually?
You can, yes. And as the live stakes that you plant, as those grow and get larger, and the limbs shooting off of those, growing off of those, get larger, you probably, once they're the size where they're like probably half an inch thick or something like that, you can cut those. You want to do that while they're dormant. And then also before you install those, especially when you're doing it yourself, they've done this on the ones that we order, but you want to soak it for a couple of days in water to kind of get it a jump start. But you can do that, yeah. You can harvest them from your own property. I think the easiest ones to do that with are some of the dogwoods and some willows too sometimes, if you get some of those shoots or suckers gone off of those.
Okay. How big of a pool should there be at the outlet of a culvert before it starts looking like a stream again?
I mean, it really depends on how big the culvert is and how big the stream is and things like that. You get those pools or those plunge pools, and it really just depends, and if it's impacting anything or causing additional erosion, or if it's in a large stream. So in headwater streams, it's not so much an issue, but in a large stream, if that's potentially a fish passage barrier, if there's a drop from the culvert, it really just depends on the situation.
Okay. We can do one more question. How do I identify a brown sludge that's been in my stream, and if it's safe or not?
A brown sludge. Well,
Yeah.
depending where you live, I would call probably the local health department would be a good place to call. If you're in the Chagrin River watershed, I'm sure you can call Kevin. He'd love to come out and take a look at it.
Yeah.
But usually for like weird stuff in the stream, either local sewer district or health department is a good place to start for that, as far as identifying that. And it could be something natural, extra sediment, something. Sometimes those sludges, we've seen them where, I mean, any number of things, obviously, from leaky septic or sewer systems, but also it could be from, fats from restaurants, things like that. So it could be any number of things, but most of those, the health department will be probably would be my first call on a lot of those.